Namaste, aloha, my name is Janapati Das. Please accept my respects. We are going to be reading from chapter 7 today from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, translated and purported upon by my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who I offer my respectful obeisances to. I'd like to also offer my respectful obeisances unto Jagat Guru Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada and pray for their mercy and continued guidance in the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. So we're going to start with some chanting of Krishna's names. So please join along while I chant on the ukulele. Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prastayate Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prastayate Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dinamine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Bhajashri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasudego Bhagavrinda Bhajashri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasudego Bhagavrinda Haripo Nitagor Haribo Haribo Nitagor Haribo Haribo Nitagor Haribo Haribo Nitagor Haribo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Gauranga Haribo Gauranga Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness, ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Okay, so continuing, or beginning, we did a read-through of chapter 7. Chapter 7 is entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Shakta Manaha Partam Yogam Yunjan Madashrayaha Asham Shayam Samagramam Yatagnash Yashi Tachurnu. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Lord said, Mai unto me, Ashakta Manaha, mind attached, Parta O son Aprita, Yogam self-realization, Yunjan so practicing, Mat Ashrayaha in consciousness of me, Krishna consciousness. Asham Shayam without doubt, Shamagaram completely, Mam unto me, Datta as much as, Kanashyashi you can know, Tat that, Shru try to hear. Text 1, translation. Now hear, O son of Prita, Arjuna, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Purport. In this 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described herein. Also, 4 kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna, and 4 kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna are described in this chapter. In this first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the living entity has been described as non-material spirit soul, which is capable of elevating himself to self-realization by different types of yogas. At the end of the 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all yoga. By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Impersonal Brahmajyoti, or localized Paramatma realization, is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth because it is partial. So we have, of course, the 3 stages of God realization, and they are God, they are Krishna, but they are not complete realization. So we have the Brahman or Brahman effulgence, Brahman realization, the realization of the impersonal form, the light emanating of all living entities and all matter, emanating off the body of Sri Krishna. Paramatma, the localized expansion of Krishna into the heart and into matter, and then of course Bhagavan. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. That's a really amazing statement, because many people don't think of spiritual paths or religion or anything as scientific, but full and scientific knowledge is Krishna. Krishna consciousness is the highest scientific. It is a science, spiritual science. And everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is the ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. Different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. One who takes directly to Krishna consciousness automatically knows about Brahmajyoti and Paramatma in full. By practice of Krishna consciousness yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia. One should therefore begin yoga practice as directed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. So we have these 9 forms of devotional service that we've brought up in different points, different times, but the first is to hear, and this is how Vedic knowledge is transmitted, is by hearing of it, right? The Lord therefore says to Arjuna, Tat Shrunu, or hear from me. So here we have Krishna, what's the word? Orating, or not? What's I skipped my mind. Anyway, the oration of the transcendental Vedic knowledge from the spiritual master, in this case Krishna, to who is transmitting it. And this was also the way that Lord Brahma, he's doing it here with Arjuna, but it was also done from Krishna to Lord Brahma, where Lord Brahma heard the sound vibrations of the Vedic knowledge in order to create the universe. And in other words, Krishna was also Lord Brahma's spiritual master. And so when we come to the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we have finished the introduction, and we're going to get into this. This is how this disciplic lineage is transmitted, because Narada Muni saw that Lord Brahma, he thought Lord Brahma was the Supreme Lord, but he saw that Lord Brahma was worshiping or praying to somebody else, so he inquired about it, and Lord Brahma was able to transmit the information that he had learned about the absolute truth to Lord Brahma, to Narada Muni. And of course, Narada Muni eventually transmitted that to Srila Vyasadeva, and we have the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is how the absolute truth is realized. Okay, let's see. Where was I? One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly, or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart puffed up with academic education. So it's not really important about what sort of material or so-called academic knowledge of their Gyani, very knowledgeable with empirical knowledge. That doesn't necessarily mean that they may be completely, it may be a hindrance actually for them to know so much, and because then they become very puffed up, as we've had we've told that story about the spiritual master and the professor, right, where he's pouring teacups and he says, my cup is too full, and he says, yes, that's your problem, your cup is too full. So sometimes people are very puffed up with academic education, and this is why Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada made it very clear about who's a qualified recipient and transmitter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's not these people who are puffed up with their academic. They may be able to do gymnastics with their Sanskrit and be able to do all the grammar and everything like that, but they have no complete understanding they've completely missed the boat. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto as follows. Okay, there's a lot of Sanskrit here. Here we go. Shrinvatam svakatam Krishna punya sravanam kirtana hridyata shto hi abad rani virundo vidu noti shrut shatam nashta prayesh vabadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavata yutamashloke bhaktir bhavati nashtiki nashtiki tada rajastamo bhava kama loba dayashchalye cheta etar anavidyam shtitam sattve prashidati evam prashanna manaso bhagavan bhakti yogata bhagavat tattvai viganam mukta sangasya jiyate biyate hridaya grantish chidyante sarva samshaya kishante chasyas karmani drista eva mani shvalye. Whew, a lot of Sanskrit. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literature or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. I love these, sometimes I think of like little fortune cookies that you could have in little fortunes, and from the fortune cookies that you could have in a bag with a cookie. It would be like a fortune cookie, but this would be it. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And we hear the Bhagavad Gita from the Bhagavatam, which is also the pure devotee who is able to transmit the Bhagavad Gita, the message of the Bhagavad Gita and the message of the Bhagavatam. So it is a righteous activity to hear about from the Bhagavad Gita. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. So Krishna knows our heart. If he knows that we have some sincerity, he will help us learn. We can pray to Krishna. We can pray to our spiritual master to please give us guidance. Please give us clarity. Please help us understand and transmit this message and also be able to live it. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. And, it's an interesting thing because it's something I think about in general. People have a hard time doing things that they are not familiar with, or they don't know. It's foreign. It's like a foreign language, right? It's hard to try to understand things. And therefore it's not as fun, right? But similarly, when we come into a conditioned state of approaching the Bhagavad Gita, we may try to read the Bhagavad Gita, but we may not understand it at all. I didn't really understand it when I first had a copy of this long before. I had two copies of Bhagavad Gita, another translation, which I ended up reading the other translation. But I had one with Bhakti, and I thought, what is all this guy writing? Bhaktivedanta writing all this other stuff. But I just want to read the Bhagavad Gita, and I didn't understand any of it. I was like, okay, well, I give up on that. So we must apply the process, right? The process is given to us by Lord Chaitanya to purify our heart by chanting Krishna's names, and we can purify our heart also by reading the Bhagavad Gita and following the instruction of our spiritual master. There's a famous story, of course, with Lord Chaitanya, and it was the Brahmana. I believe he was a Brahmana, or he was something, I can't remember. But he was reading the Bhagavad Gita, but it was upside down. And it was like, Chaitanya was like, what's going on here? And he said he was instructed by a spiritual master to read the Bhagavad Gita every day. So he was trying to do that. And all the other Brahmanas were making fun of him because he said, actually, I'm illiterate. And I just want to follow the instruction of my spiritual master. So I just imagine in my heart and in my mind Krishna and Arjuna on the chariot. And so Lord Chaitanya was very pleased with this attitude, and of course disclosed his identity to the Brahmana. So he was the most fortunate Brahmana, actually. So it is a righteous activity to hear from the Bhagavad Gita every day. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears about That's a dormant transcendence. It's not like applying, like let's give you this knowledge. Most things in the material world we don't know, and therefore we're given them. This actual transcendental knowledge is within us as like a dormant seed, and the more and more we engage in this process, the more we're applying it like the creeper in our heart, and the knowledge is there in our heart because Krishna is in our heart already. So this is something that is coming. This is why it's self-realization, right? Self-realization. It's not just like, well, you know what, I think it sounds good. I think it sounds good, just like you do when you read stuff on the internet. Oh, that goes well with my philosophy. No, you just have that realization in your heart because it's there and it's uncovering. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lusts and avarice are diminished. So these things that, because we are situated in the lower modes of material nature, of passion and ignorance, we are situated, we engage in these if we engage in these things, it covers us with material and doesn't give us this vision that we're able to see. But by the development of devotional service, we become freed from these things, these impurities. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becoming enlivened by devotional service and understands the science of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of Asham Shayam Samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead. Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 2nd Chapter, 17th through 21st verse. And yeah, it's interesting that Asham Shayam is translated without doubt, completely without doubt. Asham Shayam Shamagaram, completely without doubt. So they are completely without doubt. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. And this is what Krishna is doing. This is why the Bhagavatam is to be understood as it is, because Krishna is doing exactly what he's saying and he needed to do. Text 2. Ganam teham saviganam idam vakshami asheshataha yajganatva nea buyo naja nyaj ganatyam avashishate ganam, phenomenal knowledge, te, unto you, aham, I, sa, with, vigananam, numinal knowledge, idam, this, vakshami, shall explain, asheshtaha, in full, yat, which, ganatva, knowing, na, not, yaha, in this world, bhuya, further, anyat, anything more, ganatvam, knowable, avashyashate, remains to be known. Translation: I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and noumenal, by knowing which there shall remain nothing further to be known. So this is really important because I was hearing my spiritual master talk about this yesterday, and why, pointing to the Sri Ishopanishad, which we finished up, and the importance of understanding the phenomenal, the material energy, and the noumenal, or spiritual or transcendental energy, side by side, so that you can compare it. And so here Krishna is also bringing this point that I'm going to show you the big picture, okay? The big picture, right? Some people are, like empirical science, are pretty much just focused on the phenomenal. I mean, there might be some inquiry into, from some scientists who are a little bit more enlightened, and they're like, there's got to be some greater power behind this, but it's usually relegated to religion or philosophy as a speculative sort of thing. But here Krishna is stating that there shall remain nothing further to be known. Once you know this, you know it. This is the Shankha Yoga, right? The understanding of spirit and matter and who is the controller of both. Purport. Complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world and the spirit behind it. The source of both of them is transcendental knowledge. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge because Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. In the beginning of the 4th chapter, the explanation was given by the Lord, and it is again confirmed here. Complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord directly from the Lord in disciplic succession. That's why I said that from God comes Guru, right? Or God gives you Guru and Guru gives you God, right? So we need a spiritual master because we cannot rely on the impurities of our mind to try to elevate us into the absolute truth. So we need the devotee of Krishna to guide us, to show us what to do, to purify our hearts so that we can hear clearly. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes and the only object for meditation in all types of yoga practices. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. The Vedas say, Yasmin Viganate Sarvam Eva Viganatam Bhavanti. Text 3. Manushyanam Shahashleshu Kashid Yatati Shidhaye Yata Tamapi Siddhanam Kashin Mam Vete Tatvataha Manushyanam of men, Shahashleshu out of many thousands, Kashit someone, Yatati endeavors, Sidyaye for perfection, Yatatam of those so endeavoring, Api indeed, Siddhanam of those who have achieved perfection, Kashit someone, Mam me, Veti does know, Tatvataha in fact. Translation, text 3. Out of many thousands of men, among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Purport. There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, and hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. It's true. It's a really unfortunate situation, especially in this age of Kali, what we find ourselves going through. Everyone is madly rushing to try to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. As that being the goal of life. You know, we're in the season of Christmas, right? But the anticipation, as my spiritual master would say, it's like the anticipation, and you've got you have to make all the presents, put the, whatever you're gonna buy these, and then they put the presents in, and it's all this sort of build up of like, we're coming to Christmas Day when we get to open the presents, and those really pretty, and they're just, you're looking at it like it's a pile of gold because it's very pretty with ribbon and stuff like that. Srila Prabhupada calls those gift-wrapped emptiness, you know, because the kids, you just like, okay, it's time to open, and you open it, and it's like something you don't want, or like, is that it? You know, or like, even when you get some things you like, you kind of play with them for a while, but then you're like, okay, now okay, Christmas is over. So the anticipation's like, you know, it's this is what people, in a greater sort of extended way, we also do this. And Christmas has sort of become this materialistic anticipation of some kind of happiness that we never get, and it's revisited at New Year's Eve, where you got to count down and get drunk and just like, we're gonna have a new year and everything like that, and then it's just like, especially if you're the guy that doesn't hook up with anybody, you're just like, and then you feel terrible the next day because you've been drinking. And anyway, so this is all what we kind of like have this anticipation, this build up, this animal propensities, and we're not really inquiring about what the meaning of Christmas is, not just Jesus, but the message of Christmas, and the fact that even the word holiday, when people say, happy holidays, it doesn't even mean what it originally meant. Holidays came from two, I think it's helig des, and that meant holy days or holy day, because they knew that was a time when it was a very holy time. Lord Jesus Christ, and for the Jewish faith it was Hanukkah, and it's a very holy time. But people just kind of like, it's a time where we get to try to engage in our animal propensities and anticipate something very exciting because it's Christmas, it's the holidays, But we don't really take a moment and reflect. Not even on Thanksgiving either. And it's not even, none of that is reflection on being grateful. It's just this eating, sleeping, mating. How much can we eat? What are we going to make? We're going to have a huge Christmas with the ham or the turkey, mashed potatoes and the pie. And what are we going to, we're going to, have party, and we're going to sleep with each other, and we're going to, whatever, maybe even fight. We have to defend the political differences in the party at Christmas, and we're just like, liberals, yeah, or conservatives, no, liberals are terrible, no, conservatives are terrible, and then you're fighting to you got to defend yourself at Christmas at this time that's supposed to be like a reflection of what we're supposed to be doing, what's the purpose of our life, to learn how to love the Supreme Lord, this great personality, Shaktavesha Avatar, Lord Jesus Christ came and gave a message of peace and love among men, but mostly to cultivate your love for God so that you can have a loving relationship with that. But so nobody is asking, or people are inquiring about, who am I? What is the purpose of my life? So this is just so many people doing that all year long anyway. But Christmas and the holidays, they have to manifest it even more. The first 6 chapters of the Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge and understanding the self, the super self, and the process of realization by Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and the discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can only be known by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the supreme person, but at the same time he is beyond the knowledge of the Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and gyanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna, and oftentimes they're like, Krishna is just this part of the Brahman effulgence, and it's, you can merge into the form of Krishna, and you meditate upon him so you can get to the Brahma Jyoti. They don't have any understanding of that. The yogis and gyanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna, although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But his followers do not accept Krishna as such, for it is very difficult to know Krishna even though one has transcendental realization of impersonal Brahman. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord Govinda, Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anandir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. It is very difficult for the non-devotees to know him. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. So we've read about this last time with the impersonalists, the Mayavadis, the Vedantists, like Prakashananda Saraswati. We read about when he met with Lord Chaitanya. He was like, why do you act like a sentimentalist and chant Krishna's names? Why do you practice this inferior sort of sentimentalist process of chanting God's names? So they don't do it. But what's interesting is that the stories I've heard of many times of my spiritual master and his disciples and students in the past have chanted and been near or been friends with people who are following him personal, or Buddhist or Zen, and they have to do zazen, so they have to sit really really still and try to think of nothing, and then they have somebody walking around, and if you're kind of like falling asleep, they gotta whack you. That's not as fun as getting whacked and trying to sit still for without thinking of anything, and then you're thinking of, oh God, I want to go over to the veggie burger place later, and they're like, whack. It's like, so they would always go, after they're done with their meditation, they would go to the kirtan, because the kirtan was fun. It was like, even if though they may have thought like, oh, this is sentimentalism, they knew that it was attractive and fun, and more fun than just being sitting, either looking at your nose or meditating and getting whacked by some Buddhist monk. So it's not easy. They can't practice it. They can't practice it because they're attracted to. So if the path of bhakti is so easy as non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy, but when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Because it's like, some people are like what Jesus Christ was talking about when the sower throws seeds all wherever. Sometimes it'll land on rocks and people will not be interested at all. Sometimes it may have a little bit of soil, a little bit of like, okay, I'll do this but it's no depth. There's no depth in the soil. So the creeper, when it takes off, it does have nowhere to go and it just dies. And that's because people are weak. Oftentimes they're very more attracted to what they can get out, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, really, and they just coat it with the spiritual. I'm a spiritual person, right? I'm not religious. I'm a spiritual person. They don't really know what spiritualism means. It's really hard work. You can have fun and you can have a lot of fun, but you have to work. I mean, it's true about a lot of things in life. If you really want to succeed in something, you may be very attracted to a path like music or whatever, and you're like, oh, I want to be a musician, I want to be an artist, but then you realize that actually it takes a lot of work to be successful at doing that, and sometimes you don't feel like you want to do that anymore, but you have to go deeper. You have to go deeper in your spiritual life and take shelter of Krishna. In spiritual life, it's the same way, but people don't want to do that. They want to just oh no, I may not be happy. I may not be if I don't engage in these eating, sleeping, mating, defending or try to have lots of sex. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidyam Vina I Kantiki Hare Bhaktir Uppata Yaiva Kalpate. Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, Narada, Pancharatra, etc. is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. It is not possible for the Brahman realized impersonalist or the Paramatma realized yogi to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the son of Mother Yashoda, or the charioteer of Arjuna. Even the demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. Vuyanti yat shurayaha mam tu veda na kashchana. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says. And if one does not know him, then sa mahatma surdur durlabaha. Such a great soul is very rare. Which is why we need a spiritual master, really, and to trust and to serve them, because even the great demigods, and we've read many stories where these are empowered living entities with great power and great knowledge, really, and they are just like, they get bewildered by situations like Indra. We're having an inundation of rain, so it reminds me of Govardhan Hill. But Indra is the great king of heaven, supposedly, but he's bewildered, and he was like, Krishna, this Chinese child is stealing my goods, I'm going to show him a lesson, because he's not very knowledgeable. He's just this tiny person. And then when he realized, he had the realization when Krishna bewildered him by lifting Govardhan Hill and just saving all the residents of Vrindavan very easily, and lifting on his finger. Didn't even have to do that. He was like, wow, okay. And so Lord Indra gave a wonderful prayers. It's in the Krishna book. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, he cannot know Krishna as he is, tatvataha, even though one is a great scholar or philosopher. Only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities of Krishna. So it doesn't matter if you're like so-called materially educated or not. You could be an illiterate. It doesn't matter. If you're a devotee of Krishna, you have all knowledge. Which is the case of Chaitanya and all these impersonalists that he met. But he was a great knowledgeable person too. But only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities of Krishna and the cause of all causes, in his omnipotence and opulence, and in his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees. He is the last word in Brahman realization, and the devotees alone can realize him as he is. Therefore it is said, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Galayam Indrayahai Sevan Mukhe Hi Jiva Dao Svayam Eva Sfurati Adaha. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt of material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service unto him. Padma Purana. So our scriptures are chock full of situations like this, and I can cite several off the top of my head. When we're reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam introduction, we read about the Brahmana who was preparing great offerings to Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya, the child of Lord Nimai Pandit, was Nitai. He was like Nimai. He was like eating all the offerings, and the Brahmana kept getting frustrated, and he was just crying, and he was just like, not really mad at the child, but he was just like, oh my God, this child is taking my thing. And Krishna was actually very pleased to him and appeared to him, I believe in a dream, and then Lord Chaitanya revealed himself and had a confidential meeting with this. So there we go. He was very knowledgeable, of course, but it could be anybody in situations where there are devotees who are trying to render service to Krishna. Krishna will reveal himself to you, even when he's pleased by the littlest love and affection that you show to him every day. So you can do that every day. You can offer your food. You can have a little deity, or if you don't have deities, then you can have some pictures and offer them and pray to Krishna and Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, your spiritual master. Chant the prayers do your japa, do the things that your spiritual master wants you to do, you know. And you may feel like, well, I'm not doing very, very good things, but that's a good attitude to have. And you just keep doing them anyway, and Krishna will provide you with an opportunity if you really, really want to do something bigger, you know, and it'll come about. So that we're going to stop there, and we'll read from text 4 next time. Thank you. Haribol.